Captain Jake Morrison stared at the empty space where a ship should have been. His fingers moved across the control panel of the UES Horizon as he checked the readings again. The distress beacon was real, but all they could see were pieces of metal floating in the darkness of space. "Lisa, what do you make of this?" Jake asked his second officer. Lieutenant Lisa Parker moved to the scanner station and began running her hands over the controls. The screen showed debris scattered across several thousand kilometers. "Looks like a passenger liner, sir, maybe 3 days old. The explosion pattern suggests military-grade weapons." Lisa's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the concern underneath. Dr. Amy Rodriguez entered the bridge carrying her medical scanner. "Bobby says the debris field is safe to navigate. No radiation or dangerous materials." She paused and looked at the screen. "Were there survivors?" Jake was about to say no when a new signal appeared on their screens. "Wait, there's something else. A life pod, very faint power signature." The UES Horizon moved slowly through the wreckage. Jake had seen destroyed ships before, but this one felt different. The pieces were too small, too thoroughly destroyed. Someone had wanted to make sure nothing survived. "Got it," Bobby Chen called from the engine room through the comm system. "Life pod is intact but barely. Power will fail in about 20 minutes. Jake made the decision quickly. "Bring it aboard. Amy, get ready in the medical bay." The rescue operation took 15 minutes. When the life pod door opened, they found a small girl inside, maybe 8 years old, unconscious but breathing. Her clothes were torn and she had cuts on her arms and face. Dr. Rodriguez worked quickly to check the child's condition while Jake and Lisa searched the pod for information. They found identification papers that made Jake's blood run cold. Emma Walsh, Lisa read from the documents, daughter of Ambassador Charles Walsh and Dr. Maria Walsh. They were traveling to Sanctuary Prime for the peace talks. Jake knew about those talks. The human diplomatic mission was trying to create an alliance with the Meridian Coalition, a group of peaceful species that controlled important trade routes. It was a big deal for humanity's future in the galaxy. "Sir, you need to see this," Bobby's voice came through the comm. He had been analyzing the debris field. "The weapons that destroyed this ship were Vorthan." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Vorthan Empire was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. They had always viewed humanity's growing influence with suspicion. If they had attacked a diplomatic vessel, it meant they were willing to start a war to stop human expansion. Dr. Rodriguez appeared on the bridge with Emma, who was now awake but very quiet. The girl held onto the doctor's hand tightly and watched everything with wide, scared eyes. "Emma," Jake said gently, kneeling down to her level, "can you tell us what happened to your ship?" The little girl looked at him for a long moment before speaking in a whisper. "Big gray ships came. They had red marks on the side. Mama told me to get in the pod and hide. She said she would come get me, but she never did." Jake exchanged looks with Lisa. Red marks were the symbol of Vorthan military vessels. The girl had witnessed the attack and could identify the attackers. That made her incredibly dangerous to the Vorthans. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "if the Vorthans know she survived, they'll come looking for her." As if her words were prophecy, the ship's alarm system began blaring. Bobby's voice filled the bridge with urgency. 4 Vorthan warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're heading straight for us. Jake's mind raced. The UES Horizon was a survey ship built for exploration, not combat. Against 4 Vorthan warships, they had no chance in a direct fight. But they had something the Vorthans wanted, and that gave them a small advantage. "Bobby, how fast can we jump to hyperspace?" Jake called out. "Give me 3 minutes for the engines to charge." "We don't have 3 minutes," Lisa said, watching the tactical display. "They'll be in weapons range in 2. Jake made another quick decision. "All power to engines. Drop everything else. Life support to minimum." The ship shuddered as Bobby redirected all available energy to the hyperspace drive. The lights dimmed and the artificial gravity became lighter. Emma pressed closer to Dr. Rodriguez, who wrapped her arms around the frightened child. 1 minute 30 seconds, Bobby reported. The Vorthan ships were closing fast. Jake could see them on the main screen now, their dark gray hulls marked with the red symbols Emma had described. They were beautiful ships in a deadly way, built for one purpose, destroying other ships. "They're charging weapons," Lisa announced. 30 seconds. Jake watched the countdown timer and the approaching enemy ships. It was going to be close, maybe too close. He thought about the little girl behind him. the only survivor of a diplomatic mission that was supposed to bring peace. Now she was the target of an empire that wanted to silence her forever. 10 seconds. The Vorthon ships fired their weapons just as space around the UES horizon began to twist and bend. Energy beams passed through the space where they had been as the human ship disappeared into hyperspace. Jake fell back into his captain's chair, breathing hard. They had escaped, but it was only the beginning. The Vorthons would not give up easily. They had just declared war on humanity by attacking that diplomatic vessel. And now they needed to eliminate the only witness. Emma Walsh, a frightened 8-year-old girl, had become the most important person in human space. Her testimony could expose Vorthon aggression and rally the galaxy to humanity's side. But first, they had to keep her alive long enough to tell her story. Dr. Rodriguez was checking Emma's pulse again when the girl looked up at Jake with those wide, serious eyes. "Are the bad ships going to come back?" Jake wanted to lie, to tell her everything would be fine. Instead, he decided to give her the truth. "Maybe, but we won't let them hurt you. I promise." It was a promise that would change the course of human history. The UES horizon dropped out of hyperspace near a gas giant with 12 moons. Jake hoped the complex gravity fields would mask their energy signature while Bobby worked on the engines. They had jumped 3 times in 6 hours, and the hyperspace drive was overheating. Emma sat in the corner of the bridge, drawing pictures on a data pad that Dr. Rodriguez had given her. She drew her parents, her destroyed ship, and the gray vessels with red marks. Each drawing told part of her story, part of the truth that the Vorthons wanted to destroy. "How long before they find us?" Jake asked Lisa, who was monitoring long-range sensors. "Hard to say. Vorthon ships have better sensors than ours, but this system has a lot of interference." Lisa paused and looked at the tactical display. "Maybe 2 hours if we're lucky." Bobby's voice came through the comm from the engine room. "I need at least 4 hours to fix the hyperspace drive properly. We've been pushing it too hard." Jake did quick math in his head. 2 hours of hiding time, 4 hours of repair time. That left them 2 hours short. And those 2 hours could get them all killed. Dr. Rodriguez finished checking Emma's latest bandages and moved to stand beside Jake. "She's getting stronger, but she's still in shock. She keeps asking when her parents are coming back." Jake watched the little girl drawing. She had lost everything, but she kept drawing, kept telling her story through pictures. There was something incredibly brave about that. Something that reminded Jake why they were fighting so hard to protect her. "Sir," Lisa called out, "I'm picking up hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships coming our way." "How many?" "At least 6, maybe more." Jake's heart sank. The Vorthons had called for reinforcements. Now they weren't just facing 4 warships, they were facing a full battle group. The UES horizon had no chance against those odds. "Bobby, what's our status?" "Still need 3 hours, Captain. I can give you emergency hyperspace in 1 hour, but it might destroy the drive completely." Jake looked at their options. They could run now and maybe escape, but they would be stranded in space with no way to reach safety. They could hide and hope the Vorthons missed them, but that was a long shot. Or they could try something desperate. "Lisa, bring up the star charts for this sector." The main screen showed their current position and the surrounding star systems. Jake studied the routes to Federation space, looking for something the Vorthons wouldn't expect. "There," he said, pointing to a region marked in red. "The nebula maze." Lisa stared at him. "Sir, that's a navigation hazard. Ships that go in there don't come out." "Exactly. The Vorthons won't follow us into something that dangerous." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from Emma's drawings. "What's the nebula maze?" "A region of space where several nebulas meet," Lisa explained. "The gas clouds create sensor shadows and gravity wells that shift randomly. Plus, there's electromagnetic interference that can fry ship systems." "Sounds dangerous," Dr. Rodriguez said. "It is," Jake admitted. "But it's our only chance." "Bobby, how long to reach the nebula?" 40 minutes at full impulse. "And the Vorthons? They'll be here in 30 minutes. Jake made the decision. "Set course for the nebula maze. All power to engines." The UES horizon turned and accelerated toward the dangerous region of space that most captains avoided. Behind them, 6 Vorthon warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began pursuit. Emma stopped drawing and looked up at Jake. "Are we going somewhere safe?" Jake knelt down beside her. "We're going somewhere the bad ships won't want to follow us." "Will it hurt?" "I don't know," Jake said honestly. But we'll all stay together, okay? Emma nodded and went back to her drawing. This time she drew the UES horizon flying toward a colorful cloud. The chase began in earnest as the Vorthon ships closed the distance. Their weapons had longer range than anything on the human survey vessel, and they began firing as soon as they were in position. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. Lisa's hands moved across her controls as she threw the ship into a series of random turns and rolls. Energy beams flashed past the hull close enough to overload some of their external sensors. "They're gaining," Lisa reported. 10 minutes to the nebula, Bobby called out. Jake watched the tactical display as the enemy ships moved into better firing positions. The Vorthons were professionals, and they were treating this like a military operation. They wanted Emma dead, and they would destroy anyone who got in their way. Another energy beam struck their rear shields, causing the ship to shake violently. Emma grabbed Dr. Rodriguez's arm, but she didn't cry. She just held on and kept watching. 5 minutes to the nebula. The space ahead began to glow with strange colors as gas clouds twisted and flowed in impossible patterns. Jake had never seen the nebula maze up close before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Rear shields down to 60%, Lisa announced. 3 minutes. Jake could see the lead Vorthon ship on the main screen now. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the UES horizon. Its weapons were charging for another shot, and this one might be the last. "They're locking onto our engines," Lisa said. 2 minutes. Jake gripped his command chair as another energy beam struck them. The lights flickered and the artificial gravity wavered. Dr. Rodriguez held Emma tight as the ship shook around them. 1 minute. The nebula was directly ahead now, a wall of swirling gas and energy that stretched as far as they could see. Jake had no idea what would happen when they entered it, but anything was better than certain death at Vorthon hands. Entering the nebula now, the UES horizon plunged into the colorful chaos of the nebula maze. Immediately, their sensors began giving conflicting readings. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, and strange energy patterns danced across their hull. "I can't get a clear reading on anything," Lisa said, fighting with her controls. The Vorthons. They stopped at the nebula edge. They're holding position. Jake allowed himself a moment of relief. They had made it into the maze, and their enemies were afraid to follow. But now they faced a different kind of danger. "Bobby, what's our status?" "Systems are stable so far, but I'm reading energy fluctuations everywhere. This place could kill us just as easily as those warships." Jake nodded. They had traded one danger for another, but at least now they had some control over their fate. In the nebula, their survival would depend on their own skills and courage, not on the mercy of enemies who had none. Emma held up her newest drawing. It showed the UES horizon surrounded by colorful clouds with the gray ships far behind them. At the bottom of the picture, she had written 2 words in careful letters. "We're brave." Jake smiled at her. "Yes, we are." The Federation Council chamber on Unity Station buzzed with voices speaking dozens of different languages. Jake stood at the witness podium with Emma beside him, her small hand holding his tightly. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from the nebula maze, and now they faced a different kind of danger. Admiral Patricia Hayes sat in the human delegation section, her face grim as she watched the proceedings. The Vorthon representative, a tall being with gray skin and cold black eyes, had just finished presenting their version of events. "The human vessel attacked our patrol ships without provocation," the Vorthon ambassador said in perfect Federation standard. "They kidnapped this child and have been using her to spread lies about our peaceful intentions." Jake felt Emma's hand tighten in his. She knew the Vorthon was lying, just as everyone in that room should know. But politics in the Federation were complicated, and truth was often less important than maintaining peace. Council Speaker Zorian, a floating jellyfish-like being from the Medusi Collective, called for order. "Captain Morrison, you may present your evidence," Jake activated the holographic display that showed the debris field where they had found Emma. "This is what remained of the diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Walsh and his family to the peace talks. The weapon signatures match Vorthon military technology." "Circumstantial evidence," the Vorthon ambassador interrupted. "Many species use similar weapon types." "Then explain this," Jake said, activating another recording. Emma's voice filled the chamber as she described the attack, her words clear and precise despite her age. "The child was traumatized. the Vorthan said smoothly. She cannot be considered a reliable witness. Dr. Rodriguez stood up from the gallery. I've examined Emma Walsh extensively. Her account is consistent with her injuries and psychological state. She's telling the truth. But Jake could see doubt in many of the council members' faces. The Vorthan Empire was powerful, controlling several key trade routes and military installations. Humanity was still a junior member of the Federation with limited political influence. Council Speaker Zorian floated higher, his transparent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Council has reviewed all evidence presented. While the destruction of a diplomatic vessel is regrettable, the evidence of Vorthan involvement is not conclusive. Jake's heart sank. They were going to side with the Vorthans. However, Zorian continued, to ensure proper justice, the child will be transferred to neutral custody for further questioning by Federation investigators. No, Emma said quietly. But her voice carried across the silent chamber. The Vorthan ambassador stepped forward. The child will receive proper care under Federation oversight. No, Emma said again, louder this time. She looked up at Jake with those serious eyes. They killed my mama and papa. They want to kill me too. Jake knelt down beside her. It's okay, Emma, we won't let anyone hurt you. Admiral Hayes stood up. The human delegation requests a recess to consider this decision. Granted. 1 hour. The chamber emptied as delegates filed out to discuss the situation in private. Jake, Emma, and Dr. Rodriguez were escorted to a waiting room where Admiral Hayes joined them. This is bad, Hayes said without introduction. Half the council is scared of the Vorthans, and the other half thinks we're making trouble over nothing. But Emma's testimony means nothing if they don't want to hear it. Hayes sat down across from them. The Federation wants this problem to go away quietly. Giving Emma to neutral investigators makes them look fair while keeping the Vorthans happy. Emma had been listening to everything. What happens if I go with the investigators? Dr. Rodriguez took her hand. We don't know, sweetheart. Will I see you again? The silence that followed was answer enough. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Then we don't give her to them. Hayes stared at him. Captain, that would be disobeying a direct Federation order. So that means court-martial, imprisonment, and probably expulsion from the Federation for all humans. Jake looked at Emma, then at Dr. Rodriguez, who nodded slightly. Some things are more important than politics. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and Jake saw something dangerous in her expression. You know, Captain, I've been getting tired of Federation politics myself. When the Council reconvened, Admiral Hayes delivered humanity's official response. The human delegation respectfully declines to surrender Emma Walsh to Federation custody. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Council Speaker Zorian pulsed rapidly with what Jake assumed was agitation. Admiral Hayes, this is highly irregular. So was the murder of our diplomats. The Vorthan ambassador stepped forward, his black eyes gleaming. This confirms what we have long suspected about humanity. They are unable to follow civilized law. We follow a higher law, Hayes replied. The protection of innocent children. The Federation Council orders humanity to comply immediately. Hayes stood straighter. Then the Federation Council will be disappointed. Jake watched as delegates began talking rapidly among themselves. Some looked angry, others confused. A few seemed almost impressed by humanity's defiance. Very well, Zorian announced. Humanity has 72 hours to reconsider this decision. If Emma Walsh is not surrendered by that time, all humans will be expelled from the Federation. The gavel fell, and Jake realized they had just declared war on the entire galaxy. 3 days later, Jake found himself on the human colony world of New Texas, watching as volunteer ships arrived from across human space. Governor Ryan Kelly had declared that no human child would be handed over to murderers, and the colonists had taken up arms to defend that principle. Emma stood beside Jake on the observation deck of the Colonial Government Building, watching as more ships landed in the distance. All those people came to protect me. That's what humans do, Jake said simply. Dr. Rodriguez joined them, carrying a cup of hot chocolate for Emma. The Federation fleet will be here tomorrow. Jake nodded. They had received word that morning. 12 Federation ships, including 4 Vorthan vessels, were approaching New Texas to enforce the Council's decision. The human defenders had maybe 30 ships, Most of them converted civilian vessels. Are we going to win? Emma asked. Jake looked down at the little girl who had started this whole crisis simply by surviving an attack meant to kill her. She had lost her parents, her home, and now her entire species was at risk because they refused to abandon her. I don't know, he said honestly, but we're going to try. Emma nodded and went back to watching the ships land. She had stopped asking when her parents were coming back, but she had started asking different questions. Questions about courage, about standing up for what was right, about the price of doing good in a complicated galaxy. Admiral Hayes appeared beside them. Final count is 37 ships and about 15,000 volunteers. Not exactly overwhelming odds. It's not about the odds, Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. No, Hayes agreed. It's about the principle. Emma represents everything we believe in as humans. If we abandon her, we abandon ourselves. Jake understood now why this had become so important to everyone. Emma wasn't just a witness to Vorthan war crimes. She was a symbol of humanity's values, a test of who they really were when everything was on the line. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation, and Jake knew that win or lose, the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Emma Walsh sat in Dr. Rodriguez's office, drawing another picture while the adults talked about war. She had become good at listening while pretending to focus on her art. The grown-ups thought she didn't understand what was happening, but Emma understood more than they knew. The Federation fleet had arrived that morning. 12 massive ships hung in space above New Texas like steel clouds, waiting for humanity's final answer. Emma could see them through the office window. Dark shapes against the stars. The medical reports are conclusive, Dr. Rodriguez was saying to Captain Morrison and Admiral Hayes. Emma's injuries matched documented cases of Vorthan interrogation techniques. The evidence is clear. Jake looked tired. He had been working for 3 days straight, coordinating defenses and trying to find a peaceful solution. But the Federation won't accept it. They're too afraid of starting a war with the Vorthans. Maybe they need to be more afraid of us, Admiral Hayes said quietly. Emma looked up from her drawing. She had been thinking about something for days but hadn't known how to say it. Admiral Hayes, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Why are all the other aliens scared of the Vorthans but not scared of humans? Hayes sat down beside Emma's chair. Well, the Vorthans have bigger ships and more weapons. But humans are scarier when they're angry, right? Jake and Dr. Rodriguez exchanged glances. Emma had been watching the volunteer soldiers training outside, and she had seen something in their faces that the aliens probably didn't understand. What makes you say that? Jake asked. Emma showed them her latest drawing. It was a picture of the UES horizon flying through the dangerous nebula, with the Vorthan ships afraid to follow. The bad ships had bigger guns, but they were too scared to chase us into the pretty clouds. You weren't scared because you wanted to save me. Admiral Hayes studied the picture. You think humans are braver than Vorthans. I think humans get brave when someone hurts children. Before anyone could respond, the office door chimed. Governor Kelly entered with a strange expression on his face. Admiral, we have visitors. You're going to want to see this. They followed Kelly to the main conference room, where 3 beings unlike anything Emma had ever seen were waiting. They looked like they were made of light and shadow at the same time, constantly shifting between solid and transparent. I am Wisdom Keeper Zara of the Ethereal Collective, the center being said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We have come to observe humanity's response to this crisis. Emma had heard of the Athereals in school. They were the oldest species in the galaxy, so advanced that most people thought they were myths. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger species. You're here to watch us lose, Admiral Hayes said carefully. We are here to watch you choose, Zara replied. Your species has reached a critical moment. The decision you make about this child will define who you are for generations to come. Jake stepped forward. We've already made our choice. We protect Emma no matter what it costs. Yes, we have observed this. It is unusual, Dr. Rodriguez frowned. Unusual how? Most species prioritize survival of the group over individuals. When faced with extinction, they make logical compromises. Humanity appears to follow different logic. Emma raised her hand like she was in school. Can I say something? Zara turned to look at her, and Emma felt like those ancient eyes could see everything she had ever thought or dreamed. Speak, young one. My mama used to say that how you treat the weakest person shows who you really are. I think humans know that even when they don't think about it. The ethereal being was quiet for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile crossed its shifting features. Wisdom from the mouths of children, how appropriate. Alarms began blaring throughout the building. Governor Kelly activated the communication system, and Captain Morrison's voice filled the room. Federation fleet is moving into attack formation. All defensive units to stations. Admiral Hayes looked at the Athereals. I suppose you'll be leaving now. On the contrary, we will remain to witness what comes next. Emma followed the adults to the command center, where dozens of screens showed the space battle beginning above their world. The human ships were smaller and outnumbered, but they moved with desperate courage that Emma recognized. They're not fighting like a military, Jake observed, watching the tactical displays. They're fighting like families protecting their children. Emma watched Bobby Chen coordinate a group of mining ships that had been converted into makeshift fighters. She saw Lisa Parker leading a squadron of volunteer pilots in impossible maneuvers that should have gotten them all killed. She watched ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they believed protecting one little girl was worth risking everything. The Vorthon ships are pulling back, someone announced. They're regrouping for another assault. On the main screen, Emma could see the enemy vessels. They were beautiful and terrible, designed for victory through overwhelming force. But something was happening that the Vorthons hadn't expected. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're receiving transmissions from other species. The Meridian Coalition is declaring their support for humanity's position. The Centauran Republic is offering medical assistance, another voice added. The Rigel Trade Union is imposing sanctions on the Vorthon Empire. Admiral Hayes stared at the incoming messages. How is this possible? Wisdom Keeper Zara spoke from behind them. Your stand has been broadcast across the galaxy. Many species have been waiting for someone to show them that principles matter more than power. Emma understood what was happening better than the adults did. Humans had done something that seemed crazy to everyone else, but it was the kind of crazy that made people remember what they believed in. The Federation fleet is requesting a parley, the communications officer announced. Hayes looked at Emma. What do you think, sweetheart? Should we talk to them? Emma considered this seriously. Will they listen to my story? I think so. I think a lot of people are listening now. Emma nodded. Then we should talk. As the adults prepared for negotiations that would determine the future of human-alien relations, Emma went back to her drawing. This time she drew all the ships in space, human and alien, with the bright beings of the ethereal collective watching over everything. At the bottom of the picture, she wrote, sometimes being right is more important than being safe. She didn't know it yet, but those words would become humanity's motto in the new galaxy they were creating, one where protecting the innocent mattered more than political convenience, and where the courage of ordinary people could change the course of history. The real test wasn't whether humanity could win the battle. The real test was whether they would remain human while doing it, and as Emma watched her protectors prepare to negotiate for her life and their principles, she knew they had already passed. The negotiations took place on neutral ground aboard the Federation flagship. Emma sat between Admiral Hayes and Dr. Rodriguez, her latest drawing pad in her lap, while species from across the galaxy watched through holographic displays. Council Speaker Zorian floated at the head of the conference table. His bioluminescent patterns dim with what Emma had learned was exhaustion. The situation has become complicated beyond our initial assessment. The Vorthon ambassador maintained his cold expression. Nothing has changed. The human child must be surrendered for proper questioning. Everything has changed, Admiral Hayes replied. Half the galaxy is now watching this proceeding. Emma's story has been heard on 1,000 worlds. Emma looked around the table at all the alien faces. Some looked curious, others worried, a few seemed angry, but they were all listening now, which was more than they had done before. May I tell my story again? Emma asked quietly. Zorian's patterns brightened with surprise. Child, you have already given your testimony. Yes, but now more people are listening. Emma stood up on her chair so everyone could see her better. She had practiced this moment in her mind for days, knowing it would be important. My name is Emma Walsh. I am 8 years old. 3 weeks ago, bad people with gray ships killed my mama and papa because they were trying to make peace with the Meridian Coalition. Her voice was small but clear in the silent chamber. They shot our ship, until it broke into pieces. Mama put me in the escape pod and told me to hide. She said she would come get me, but the bad people killed her before she could. Emma held up her drawing pad, showing the pictures she had made. These are the ships that hurt us. Captain Morrison and his friends saved me, and now everyone is mad at them for keeping me safe. She looked directly at the Vorthan ambassador. You want to take me away so I can't tell people what really happened. But I already told everyone, so it doesn't matter anymore. The chamber was completely silent. Emma sat back down and took Dr. Rodriguez's hand. The child speaks truth, came a new voice. Everyone turned as Wisdom Keeper Zara materialized at the table, uninvited but impossible to ignore. The Ethereal Collective has reviewed the evidence and finds humanity's claims valid. The Vorthan ambassador's composure cracked slightly. This is a human matter. The Athereals have no jurisdiction. We have the jurisdiction of age and wisdom, Zara replied. We have watched species rise and fall for millions of years. Rarely have we seen such moral clarity from one so young. Zorian's patterns shifted rapidly. Wisdom Keeper, what is the collective's position? Humanity has demonstrated qualities that intrigue us. Their willingness to risk everything for a single individual shows remarkable moral development. Emma didn't understand all the big words, but she could tell something important was happening. The other aliens were looking at each other nervously, and the Vorthan ambassador seemed scared for the first time. The Ethereal Collective extends its protection to humanity, Zara announced. Any attack on human worlds will be considered an attack on us. The effect was immediate. Several alien delegates began talking urgently among themselves. The Vorthan ambassador stepped backward as if he had been struck. Admiral Hayes leaned forward. Wisdom Keeper, we're honored, but we don't understand why. Because you proved something we needed to see. When faced with extinction, you chose principles over survival. That is the mark of a species ready for greater responsibility. Emma tugged on Dr. Rodriguez's sleeve. What does that mean? It means we passed the test, sweetheart. Council Speaker Zorian called for order. In light of new circumstances, this council will recess to consider revised positions. But the Vorthan ambassador was already leaving, his delegation following quickly behind. Emma watched them go and felt something she hadn't expected. Sadness. They're scared now, she said. Jake Morrison, who had been quiet during the negotiations, knelt down beside her chair. Are you okay with that? Emma thought about it carefully. I don't want them to be scared. I want them to be sorry. Maybe someday they will be. The formal sessions continued for 3 more days, but the real decisions had already been made. The Vorthan Empire found itself isolated as species after species declared support for humanity's position. The Federation Council voted to censure the Vorthans and launch a full investigation into their military activities. Emma spent those days exploring the Federation flagship with Dr. Rodriguez and drawing pictures of all the different aliens she met. Many of them wanted to talk to her, to understand how one small human had changed everything. You're famous now, a young Centauran told her in the ship's recreation area. I don't want to be famous, Emma replied. I just wanted people to know what happened to my mama and papa. Everyone knows now. Emma nodded and continued drawing. Her latest picture showed the UES horizon surrounded by ships from many different species, all of them flying together toward a bright star. When the negotiations finally ended, Emma found herself back on New Texas with a very different future ahead of her. Dr. Rodriguez had officially adopted her, and they were planning to stay on the colony world that had risked everything to protect her. What happens now? Emma asked as they watched the Federation fleet preparing to leave. Admiral Hayes, now promoted to the new position of human ambassador to the Ethereal Collective, sat down beside her. Now we build something better. The galaxy has seen what humans will do to protect the innocent. That changes everything. Will there be more wars? Maybe. But there will also be more people willing to stand up for what's right. Emma looked up at the stars, where ships from dozens of species were departing New Texas. Many of them had come as enemies or skeptics, but they were leaving as something different. Dr. Rodriguez says I can go to school with alien children now. The new Galactic Academy, Hayes confirmed. Right here on New Texas, children from all over the galaxy will come to learn. Emma liked that idea. She had learned that most problems started when people didn't understand each other. Maybe if children grew up together, they would do better than their parents had. Captain Morrison joined them on the observation deck. "Emma, I have something for you." He handed her a small medal, nothing fancy, but Emma could tell it was important to him. "This is my first captain's medal. I want you to have it because you're the bravest person I've ever met." Emma looked at the medal, then at all the adults who had protected her. "I wasn't brave. I was just telling the truth." Sometimes that's the same thing. As the last Federation ship disappeared into hyperspace, Emma realized that her story was really just beginning. She had started as a frightened little girl hiding in an escape pod. But somehow she had become something more, a symbol of what was possible when good people decided to do the right thing, no matter what it cost. The galaxy was different now, and it had changed because ordinary humans had decided that protecting one child was worth risking everything. Emma didn't fully understand the politics or the consequences, but she understood the most important part. When someone needed help, humans would be there. That night, as Dr. Rodriguez tucked her into bed in their new home on New Texas, Emma asked one final question. "Will you tell me stories about Mama and Papa?" "Every night, if you want." Emma smiled and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would start school at the new academy, where human and alien children would learn together. She would make new friends and draw new pictures and slowly build a life that her parents would have been proud of. But tonight, she was just a little girl who had been loved enough that an entire species had been willing to fight for her. And in a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, that was the most amazing thing of all. Outside her window, the stars shone down on New Texas, where the first truly integrated colony in galactic history was taking shape. Children from 100 worlds would grow up together here, learning that courage and kindness mattered more than the size of your ships or the strength of your weapons. Emma Walsh had lost her parents, but she had gained something else, the knowledge that when the universe tested humanity, they had chosen love over fear, principle over survival, and the protection of innocence over political convenience. It was, as she had written in her very first drawing aboard the UES Horizon, enough to make anyone brave.